The weekend adoption market was buzzing with excitement. Families walked around with their children, looking at all the dogs and cats hoping to find new homes. The sun was shining bright, and everyone seemed happy and hopeful. But in the far corner, away from all the noise and crowds, sat a beautiful golden-colored dog named Luna. Luna was 3 years old, which meant she wasn't a puppy anymore. Her fur was thick and golden, and her eyes were the warmest brown you could imagine. She had been living at the animal shelter for almost 2 years now, and this wasn't her first time at the adoption market. She knew the routine by heart. Every Saturday morning, the shelter workers would load all the animals into big vans and bring them to the market. The puppies and small dogs always got the best spots right at the front, where everyone could see them. Luna always ended up in the same corner spot in cage number 15, right next to the fence. She didn't mind the corner spot too much. From there, she could watch everything that happened. She could see the families walking by, the children pointing excitedly at the smaller dogs, and the way people's faces lit up when they saw the tiny puppies playing together. Luna had learned to read people over her time at the shelter. She could tell which families were serious about adopting and which ones were just looking around. She could sense when someone might stop at her cage, and she had perfected the art of looking hopeful without seeming too eager. The morning started like any other. Maria, one of the shelter volunteers, had given Luna a quick brush before putting her in the transport van. "Today might be your day, sweetie," Maria had whispered. But Luna had heard those words many times before. As the hours passed, Luna watched family after family walk by her corner. A young couple stopped at the cage next to hers, where a small beagle mix was jumping up and down with excitement. The couple laughed and asked to hold the little dog. Within 20 minutes, they were filling out adoption papers. Then came a family with 2 young children. The kids ran straight to the front row where the puppies were kept. Luna could hear their excited voices saying things like, "This one is so cute, and can we take this fluffy one home?" The parents followed behind, smiling and taking pictures with their phones. Luna stood up in her cage and wagged her tail hopefully when one of the children looked her way. The little girl pointed at Luna and said something to her mom. Luna's heart jumped a little. Maybe this was it. Maybe this family would come over and see how gentle and loving she was. But the mother looked at Luna and shook her head. Luna was too big for their apartment. She explained to her daughter. They needed something smaller, something that wouldn't take up so much space or need as much exercise. The family moved on to look at the smaller dogs in the front row. This happened over and over again throughout the morning. People would glance at Luna, sometimes even smile, but then they would keep walking. Some families didn't even notice her corner cage, because they were so focused on the more popular animals up front. By noon, the sun was getting hot, and Luna was feeling tired. She had been standing hopefully for hours, tail wagging whenever someone came near. But now she was starting to understand that today might not be different from all the other days. She watched as an elderly man adopted a calm older cat. She saw a young woman fall in love with a tiny puppy that fit in her hands. She observed this. A family with teenagers chose an energetic young dog that could keep up with their active lifestyle. Luna lay down in her cage and put her head on her paws. She could still see everything happening around her, but she wasn't standing up anymore. The concrete floor was hard and warm from the sun, but she was used to it. Maria noticed that Luna was lying down and came over to check on her. "Don't give up yet, girl," Maria said softly, slipping a small treat through the cage bars. "The right person is out there somewhere. Sometimes they just take a little longer to find us." Luna ate the treat and looked up at Maria with grateful eyes. She trusted Maria, and she knew the volunteer was doing everything she could to help all the animals find homes. But Luna also understood something that Maria might not want to admit. Some animals were just harder to place than others. As the afternoon wore on, more and more animals left with their new families. The cages around Luna were getting empty. The puppies were gone first, of course. Then the small dogs, even some of the older cats had found homes. Luna could see the other shelter workers starting to clean up. They were folding blankets and collecting empty water bowls. The adoption market would be closing soon, and then it would be time to load all the remaining animals back into the vans. She had been through this routine so many times before. Back to the shelter, back to the same kennel, back to waiting for another chance next weekend. Luna wasn't angry or bitter about it. She had accepted this as her life. But deep down, she still held onto a tiny spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, someone would see something special in her. As the shadows grew longer and the crowd started to thin out, Luna closed her eyes and tried to rest. Tomorrow would be another day at the shelter, and maybe next weekend would bring new possibilities. She had learned to find small joys in her daily routine, the morning walks, the gentle words from volunteers, and the brief moments of human connection. But for now, she was still the dog in cage number 15, still waiting, still hoping, still believing that somewhere out there was a person who would see past her size and age, and recognize the loving heart that beat inside her chest. Luna's story didn't start at the adoption market. 2 years ago, she had been living a completely different life. She belonged to an old man named Mr. Johnson who lived in a small house with a big backyard. Every morning, Mr. Johnson would sit on his porch with his coffee, and Luna would lie beside him, watching the world wake up. Mr. Johnson loved Luna more than anything. He had found her as a puppy wandering near his neighborhood, and they had been best friends ever since. Luna knew all sorts of tricks that Mr. Johnson had taught her. She could sit, stay, shake hands, and even play dead when he pointed his finger at her like a pretend gun. But as Mr. Johnson got older, walking became harder for him. His family started visiting more often, and Luna could sense that something was changing. The conversations always stopped when she entered the room, and there were lots of serious faces and worried voices. One day, Mr. Johnson sat with Luna on the porch for a very long time. He kept petting her golden fur and telling her what a good girl she was. Luna didn't understand why he seemed so sad, but she stayed close to him, trying to make him feel better. The next week, Mr. Johnson's daughter came to the house with some papers and a leash that Luna had never seen before. Mr. Johnson was crying, which scared Luna because she had never seen him cry before. He hugged her tight and whispered that he had to go live somewhere where they couldn't take care of dogs, and that she needed to find a new family who could love her just as much as he did. That was how Luna ended up at the animal shelter for the first time. She didn't understand why Mr. Johnson wasn't coming back for her, and she spent the first few weeks looking hopefully at every visitor, thinking maybe he would walk through those doors. The shelter workers were kind to Luna. They could see she was well-trained and gentle. She never barked too much, never bit anyone, and always listened when they called her name. But finding a home for a fully grown dog was much harder than finding homes for puppies. Her first adoption attempt came after 3 months at the shelter. A young family with small children fell in love with Luna's gentle nature. They took her home, and for a few weeks, Luna thought she had found her new forever family. But Luna was still young and full of energy. She needed lots of exercise and playtime, and the family wasn't prepared for how much attention a big dog required. When Luna got excited, she would run around their small backyard and sometimes knock over the children's toys. She would shed her golden fur on their furniture, and even though she tried her best to be good, the family decided she was too much work. After 6 weeks, they brought her back to the shelter. Luna was confused and heartbroken. She had started to love her new family, especially the children who would play with her in the evenings. But now she was back in a kennel, wondering what she had done wrong. The second adoption happened 8 months later. This time, an older couple thought Luna might be perfect for them. They had owned dogs before and understood that big dogs needed space and exercise. Luna was so happy to have a home again. She loved going on long walks with her new owners and sleeping by their fireplace at night. But after 2 months, the woman in the family developed allergies to dog hair. No matter how much they brushed Luna or cleaned the house, the woman couldn't stop sneezing and having trouble breathing. The couple were heartbroken. But they had to make the difficult decision to return Luna to the shelter. This second return was even harder for Luna to understand. She knew she hadn't been bad this time. She had followed all the rules, been gentle and loving, and tried her best to be the perfect dog. But somehow, it still wasn't enough. Back at the shelter, Luna started to change. She was still gentle and sweet, but she became more cautious around new people. She had learned that getting her hopes up could lead to disappointment. The shelter workers noticed that she wasn't as excited about potential adopters as she used to be. Now, at the adoption market, Luna had developed a routine. She would stand hopefully when families approached, but she wouldn't get too excited anymore. She had learned to read the signs of rejection before they even happened. When families looked at her and immediately started talking about her size, Luna knew they would move on. When people commented on her thick fur or asked about how much exercise she needed, Luna could predict they would choose a different dog. She watched this pattern repeat itself over and over again. A family would approach, look interested for a moment, ask a few questions, and then politely move away to look at the smaller, easier dogs. Each time, Luna felt a little piece of her hope chip away. Maria, the shelter volunteer, knew Luna's story by heart. She had been there for both of Luna's returns, and she had seen how each disappointment had affected the sweet dog. Maria tried everything she could think of to help Luna find a home. She would tell potential adopters about Luna's training, her gentle nature with children, and how well-behaved she was. But it seemed like every family wanted a puppy or a small dog that wouldn't take up much space. They wanted something cute and easy, not a mature dog who needed patience and understanding. As the day at the adoption market continued, Maria watched Luna's energy fade. The dog who had started the morning standing at the front of her cage was now lying in the back corner, chin resting on her paws. Luna's eyes still followed the people walking by, but she had stopped getting up every time someone approached. Maria knew that look. It was the look of a dog who had been disappointed too many times. It broke her heart to see such a wonderful animal losing hope, but she also understood why it was happening. In a world full of cute puppies and small dogs, Luna was just too ordinary, too big, and too old to catch most people's attention. But Maria refused to give up on Luna, even if Luna was starting to give up on herself. The sun was starting to set, and the adoption market was winding down. Most of the families had gone home with their new pets, and the volunteers were beginning to pack up the empty cages. Luna could hear the familiar sounds of cleanup time, metal cages clanking, volunteers calling to each other, and the rustle of blankets being folded. She had given up hope for the day. This had been like so many other adoption events, lots of people looking, lots of other animals finding homes, and Luna still waiting in cage number 15. She was lying down now, her golden head resting on her paws, watching the last few visitors walk around the nearly empty market. That's when she noticed someone different. A woman in blue scrubs was walking slowly past the remaining cages. Not like the families who had been rushing around earlier. She wasn't with children or a partner, and she didn't seem to be in any hurry. She stopped at each cage and spent time really looking at the animals inside. The woman looked tired, like she had been working all day. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she carried a small backpack over her shoulder. She wasn't dressed up like the families who had come earlier. She looked like someone who had just finished a long day at work. Luna watched as the woman stopped at the cage next to hers, where an old cat was sleeping. The woman didn't try to wake the cat or get its attention. She just stood there quietly, respecting the animal's rest. There was something calm and patient about her that Luna found interesting. When the woman finally reached Luna's cage, something unexpected happened. Instead of standing up and looking down at Luna like everyone else had done, the woman sat down right on the concrete ground. She crossed her legs and made herself comfortable, as if she had all the time in the world. Luna lifted her head and looked at this unusual visitor. Most people stayed standing when they looked at the animals. They would bend down for a moment, maybe stick their fingers through the cage bars, but then they would move on quickly. This woman was different. She was settling in like she planned to stay a while. "Hello there, beautiful girl," the woman said softly. Her voice was gentle and calm, not excited or loud like the voices of the children who had been there earlier. "You look like you've had a long day." Luna found herself moving closer to the front of the cage. There was something about this woman's energy that felt safe and peaceful. She wasn't trying to get Luna excited or make her perform tricks. She was just sitting there, being present. The woman reached out slowly and let Luna sniff her hand through the cage bars. Luna could smell interesting scents on her fingers, other animals, medicine, and something that smelled like the veterinarian's office where Luna had gotten her shots. This woman worked with animals, Luna realized. "I work at the animal hospital just down the street," the woman said, as if she had read Luna's thoughts. "I was driving home and saw all the activity here. I pass by this market every weekend, but I've never stopped before." Maria noticed the woman sitting by Luna's cage and walked over. She was surprised to see someone new this late in the day, especially someone who seemed so genuinely interested in Luna. "That's Luna," Maria said, kneeling down next to the woman. "She's been with us for almost 2 years now. She's one of the sweetest dogs we've ever had." The woman in scrubs listened as Maria told Luna's story. She learned about Mr. Johnson, about the 2 previous adoptions that hadn't worked out, and about how Luna had been waiting patiently for the right family to notice her. "She knows basic commands in both English and Spanish," Maria explained. "Her first owner taught her well. She's never shown any aggression toward people or other animals. She loves car rides, walks perfectly on a leash, and chews completely." How strange. As Maria talked, Luna moved even closer to the cage door. The woman kept her hand extended, and Luna gently pressed her nose against the woman's fingers. It was a simple gesture, but it felt like a conversation between them. "Why hasn't anyone adopted her?" the woman asked, genuinely puzzled. "She seems perfect," Maria sighed. "She's too big for most apartments. People worry about the shedding, the exercise needs, the food costs, and honestly, most people want puppies. They want to raise a dog from the beginning, not take on someone else's adult dog." The woman nodded thoughtfully. She understood those concerns. They were practical and real. But as she sat there looking at Luna, she found herself thinking about her own life. She lived alone in a small apartment and worked long hours at the veterinary hospital. She had been feeling lonely lately, especially during the quiet evenings after work. "What kind of exercise does she need?" the woman asked. "A good walk in the morning and evening would make her happy," Maria replied. "She's not hyperactive. She's actually quite calm for her age. She just needs some daily activity and companionship." The woman looked at Luna again. The dog was sitting quietly now, not begging or trying to get attention, just waiting patiently. There was dignity in her posture, a quiet strength that the woman found appealing. "I've never owned a big dog," the woman admitted. "I've always thought about getting a pet, but my work schedule is pretty demanding. I'm gone for 10 or 12 hours some days." "Luna is very adaptable," Maria said hopefully. She spent most of her life with an elderly owner who wasn't very active. She's learned to be content with quiet companionship and working at a vet hospital. "You certainly know how to take care of her medical needs." The woman realized that was true. She dealt with dogs and cats all day at work, but she had never thought about how that experience might translate to owning her own pet. She knew about vaccinations, nutrition, common health problems, and warning signs of illness. In many ways, she was probably better prepared to be a dog owner than most people. As the conversation continued, Luna seemed to sense that something important was happening. She moved to the very front of her cage and sat down directly in front of the woman. Their faces were only a few inches apart, separated by the cage bars. The woman found herself looking directly into Luna's warm brown eyes. There was intelligence there, and patience, and something that looked almost like understanding. It was as if Luna knew that this moment was different from all the other moments throughout the day. "Can I take her out of the cage?" the woman asked. Suddenly, "I'd like to meet her properly." Maria's face lit up. It had been months since anyone had asked to actually spend time with Luna outside of her cage. She quickly opened the cage door, and Luna stepped out calmly, sitting immediately next to the woman without being asked. The woman gently petted Luna's golden fur, surprised by how soft it was. Luna leaned slightly against her, not demanding attention but simply accepting the affection. It felt natural and comfortable, like they had known each other for much longer than just a few minutes. The woman sat on the concrete ground with Luna beside her for what felt like hours, though it was probably only 20 minutes. Other volunteers were finishing their cleanup around them, loading empty cages into vans and saying goodbye to the few remaining animals. But this little corner of the adoption market had become its own peaceful world. Luna was different outside of her cage. She wasn't jumping around or trying too hard to impress anyone. She simply sat close to the woman, occasionally looking up at her face or sniffing her hand. Sometimes she would rest her head against the woman's knee, as if she was saying thank you for the attention. She's so calm, the woman said to Maria, who was watching hopefully from a few feet away. I was expecting her to be more excited or energetic. That's just Luna's personality. Maria explained. She's learned to be patient. She saves her energy for the things that matter most to her, like walks and quiet companionship. She's not the type of dog who will destroy your furniture if you're gone for the day. The woman found herself really thinking about what it would be like to have Luna in her life. She lived in a small apartment on the second floor of an older building. There was no yard, but there was a nice park just 2 blocks away where she could take Luna for walks. The apartment building allowed pets, though there was a small monthly fee. Her biggest worry was her work schedule. As a veterinary assistant, she often worked 10 or 12-hour days. Some weeks she worked 6 days instead of 5. Would it be fair to leave Luna alone for so long? Would Luna be happy with that kind of life? What happens when she's alone all day? The woman asked Maria. Does she get anxious or destructive? Actually, Luna does really well when left alone. Maria said her previous families mentioned that she would just sleep most of the day when they were gone. She's not a dog who needs constant entertainment. She seems to understand that people have to work. The woman looked down at Luna, who was now lying down with her head resting on the woman's foot. There was something so trusting about the way Luna had relaxed completely, as if she already felt safe with this new person. I have to be honest, the woman said. I've never owned a big dog before. I had a small terrier when I was a kid, but that was years ago. I'm worried I might not know what I'm doing. Maria smiled. But you work with animals every day. You probably know more about dog care than most pet owners. You understand nutrition, health issues, behavior signs. That's actually a huge advantage. That was true, the woman realized. At work, she helped examine dogs of all sizes every day. She knew what a healthy dog should look like, how to spot early signs of illness, and how to handle dogs who were scared or anxious. She also knew which foods were best, how often dogs needed exercise, and what vaccinations were important. There's something else I should mention, Maria said carefully. We have a trial adoption program for dogs who have been with us for a long time. Instead of committing right away, you could take Luna home for 2 weeks and see how you both adjust. If it doesn't work out, you can bring her back with no questions asked. The woman's heart jumped a little at this suggestion. A trial period meant she wouldn't have to make such a big decision right now. She could see how Luna fit into her daily routine, how her neighbors reacted to having a big dog in the building, and whether she could handle the responsibility. How does that work exactly? She asked. We would do all the same paperwork as a regular adoption, but it would be marked as a trial, Maria explained. You take Luna home with some food, her favorite toy, and an information packet. After 2 weeks, you decide whether you want to make it permanent. About 80% of our trial adoptions become permanent. Luna seemed to sense that the conversation had become more serious. She sat up and moved closer to the woman, gently placing her front paw on the woman's knee. It was such a simple gesture, but it felt like Luna was saying, "Please give me a chance." The woman looked into Luna's eyes and felt something shift inside her chest. She had been living alone for 3 years since her last relationship ended. Her days followed the same routine: work, home, dinner, television, sleep. On weekends, she would clean her apartment, do laundry, maybe meet a friend for coffee. It was a quiet life, but lately it had started feeling empty. What would I need to do to start the trial? The woman heard herself asking. Maria's face lit up with excitement, but she tried to stay professional. We would need you to fill out the adoption application, provide proof that your building allows pets, and show identification. The whole process takes about an hour, and Luna would come home with me tonight? If you want her to. Yes, we have adoption supplies in the van, food, bowls, a leash, even a dog bed. Everything you need to get started. The woman felt nervous and excited at the same time. This wasn't what she had planned when she stopped by the adoption market. She had just been curious, maybe a little lonely after a long day at work. But now she was seriously considering bringing home a 60-pound dog who would completely change her quiet life. Luna seemed to understand that a decision was being made. She moved even closer and rested her head on the woman's lap, looking up with those patient brown eyes. It was as if she was saying, "I've been waiting for someone like you for so long. Please don't walk away like all the others." The trial period starts today, the woman asked. It starts the moment you take her home, Maria confirmed. 2 weeks from tonight, you can decide whether this is the right match for both of you. The woman took a deep breath. She thought about her empty apartment, her predictable routine, and the loneliness she had been feeling lately. Then she looked at Luna, who had been waiting patiently for 2 years for someone to see her value. "Okay," the woman said quietly. "Let's try this together." Luna's tail started wagging for the first time all day. Not the hopeful wag she had been doing earlier, when families passed by, but a real, genuine, happy wag. It was as if she understood that something wonderful was about to happen. Maria jumped up with excitement. "Really? You want to start the trial adoption tonight?" The woman nodded, feeling scared and excited and hopeful all at once. "Yes, let's do this." As they walked toward the van to get the adoption paperwork, Luna stayed close beside the woman, matching her pace perfectly. She didn't pull on the leash or get distracted by other people. She just walked calmly, as if she already knew that her life was about to change forever. For the first time in 2 years, Luna was going home with someone new, and for the first time in a long time, the woman felt like her life was about to become much more interesting. 2 weeks later, the woman sat in the same veterinary office where she worked every day, but this time she was on the other side of the counter. Luna sat calmly beside her, wearing a bright blue collar that they had picked out together at the pet store. In front of them were the final adoption papers that would make Luna officially hers forever. The trial period had been nothing like what she had expected. She had worried that Luna would be anxious in a new home, that she might bark at neighbors or have accidents in the apartment. She had imagined coming home to chewed furniture or finding that Luna was too much work for her busy schedule. Instead, Luna had settled into their routine as if she had been living there for years. On the first morning, the woman had woken up, worried about how to manage everything, but she found Luna sleeping peacefully on the dog bed beside her own bed, waiting patiently for her new person to wake up. Their morning walks became the best part of the woman's day. They would walk to the park 2 blocks away, where Luna would sniff around and greet other dogs politely. Luna never pulled on the leash or got into fights with other animals. She seemed to understand that this was their special time together. At work, the woman found herself talking about Luna constantly. Her coworkers had noticed that she seemed happier and more energetic. During lunch breaks, instead of sitting alone in the break room, she would walk home quickly to take Luna out for a short walk and some companionship. "She's like having a roommate who never complains," the woman had told her friend Katie. "She's just happy to be included in whatever I'm doing." The evenings were the biggest surprise. The woman had always felt restless after work, never quite sure how to spend her free time. Now she had Luna to walk, to brush, to simply sit with while watching television. Luna had a way of making even quiet moments feel warmer and less lonely. Luna's presence had changed other parts of the woman's life too. She had started taking different routes to work so she could walk past the park. She had met several neighbors in her building who also had dogs. She had even joined a weekend hiking group that welcomed pets, something she never would have considered before. The most amazing thing was how well Luna seemed to understand her schedule. On days when the woman had to work late, Luna would sleep peacefully until she came home. On weekends when they had more time together, Luna would be more playful and energetic. It was as if Luna had been studying her new person and learning exactly what kind of companion she needed. Now, signing the final adoption papers. The woman couldn't imagine her life without Luna. The apartment felt like a real home now instead of just a place where she slept. Her morning coffee tasted better when Luna was sitting beside her on the small balcony. Even her work felt more meaningful because she had someone waiting for her. At the end of each day, I have to admit, she said to Dr. Martinez, the veterinarian who was processing the paperwork. I was terrified that first night. I kept thinking I had made a huge mistake. Dr. Martinez smiled. That's completely normal. Most people feel overwhelmed when they first bring home a new pet. But Luna looks like she's found exactly where she belongs. Luna seemed to understand that something important was happening. She sat perfectly still while the woman signed each paper, occasionally looking up at her new owner's face, as if to say thank you. 6 months after the adoption became official, the woman and Luna were back at the weekend adoption market, but this time they were there as volunteers. Luna wore a bright red bandana that identified her as an ambassador dog, a successful adoption story who helped nervous children and adults feel more comfortable around the shelter animals. Luna was perfect in this role. She would lie calmly next to children who were afraid of dogs, letting them pet her soft fur until they felt brave enough to meet the animals who were looking for homes. Parents would see how gentle and well-behaved Luna was and realize that older shelter dogs could make wonderful family pets. This is Luna, the woman would tell families who stopped by. 6 months ago, she was living in a cage at the shelter, waiting for someone to notice her. Now she's helping other dogs find their forever homes. She loved telling Luna's story because it helped people understand that the best animals weren't always the puppies in the front cages. Sometimes the perfect pet was the patient dog in the corner who had been waiting quietly for the right person to see their value. During one adoption event, a young couple approached with their teenage daughter. They had been looking at puppies all morning, but something about Luna caught their attention. She's so calm and friendly. The mother said, kneeling down to pet Luna. How long was she at the shelter before you adopted her? Almost 2 years, the woman replied. Everyone passed by her because they wanted something smaller or younger. But she turned out to be exactly what I needed, even though I didn't know I needed her. The family ended up adopting a 3-year-old mixed breed who had been at the shelter for 8 months. As they filled out the paperwork, the teenage daughter kept looking at Luna. Your dog seems so happy, she said to the woman, like she knows how lucky she is. The woman looked down at Luna, who was sitting beside her with that patient, dignified expression she had mastered. I think we're both pretty lucky. I thought I was doing her a favor by adopting her, but she ended up changing my whole life. As they packed up after another successful adoption day, the woman reflected on how much had changed since that first evening, when she had stopped by the market out of curiosity. She had been living a quiet, predictable life that felt safe but empty. Now every day brought small adventures, new walking routes, friendly conversations with other dog owners, and the simple joy of having someone who was always happy to see her come home. Luna had taught her that the best things in life weren't always the most obvious choices. She had learned that patience and loyalty were more valuable than excitement and energy. Most importantly, she had discovered that sometimes when you think you're rescuing someone else, they end up rescuing you right back. That evening, as they walked home from the adoption event, Luna trotted beside her with the same calm confidence she had shown from their very first meeting. The woman realized that Luna had never been unsold at the market that day 6 months ago. She had simply been waiting for the right person to recognize that some of the best things in life require patience to find and wisdom to appreciate. Looking back, the woman couldn't imagine how different her life might have been if she had driven straight home that evening instead of stopping at the adoption market. Luna had been exactly what she needed, even though she hadn't known she needed anything at all. Their story had become proof that sometimes the most perfect matches happen when you're not looking for them, and that the most meaningful relationships often begin with a simple act of giving someone, or some dog, a chance to show you who they really are.